with geisha mania, what's a grumpy genderqueer Asian to do? Grab her chopsticks and head to the opening of the Matthew Barney Drawing Restraint exhibition at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. The exhibition showcases installations, drawing, photographs related to Drawing Restraint 9, a recent film by Matthew Barney featuring Barney and his wife Bjork as self-proclaimed Occidental guests on Japan's Nishin Maru, the only factory whaling ship currently operating in the world. During this 2-hour and 15-minute epic non-narrative extravaganza, have some of you seen it? Yeah. Yes, okay. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I'm just going to briefly give a highly subjective gloss of what happens in this film. Okay, so during this film, we watch professional whalers engage in the construction and destruction of Matthew Barney's signature petroleum jelly sort of sculpture. And they're asked to sort of schlep the Vaseline around and eat Jello molds that look like his sculpture, and we wonder why they look less than enthused. They also perform elaborate rituals. Barney asks them to harpoon not a whale, as they're trained to do, but a piece of ambergris, which is basically a whale hairball. It's the undigestible stuff that whales can't digest, and they spit it up, and it floats along like a big turd. Barney was very excited that they passed along one of these floating turds, had them harpoon it, and then treat it in a ritual manner in the same way that they would treat a whale, and then he added some of his own rituals as well. Of course, we do see some authentic Japanese cultural aspects, such as the fine art of gift wrapping. We're very famous for that. Musical instruments. There's dancing and then pearl diving, yes. And then a kid vomits. We do that a lot too. And then there's just kind of mischief making happening. So we do get a kind of really interesting cultural perspective. But the core of this narrative really revolves around the two Occidental guests who willfully and adventurously embark on this Japanese host ship of foreign rites and rituals. Their journey includes being bathed, shaved, and dressed in these elaborate formal kimonos made of horse hides, and attended by these attendants that look very enthused. And they're dressed in these elaborate kimonos that are all sort of mammal fur and some sea stuff bits. They attend a very formal Japanese tea ceremony where they learn about the history of the ship and things like that. And then after the tea ceremonist leaves, here's the tea ceremony guy, then there's a big storm, and then their cabin starts filling up with hot petroleum jelly. At this point, they fall in love, and then they pull out their ritual knives, and they make out, and then they start erotically slicing at each other's legs, pulling off bits of flesh that look remarkably like tuna sashimi, and then eating them very, very, erotically. Barney wrote a little song poem, and it goes like this: skin slit, consensual knife. She cuts his figure. He flences her field. Ooh. Okay. And so the cutting goes on, and then they just have these little bone stumps for legs. And then they dip down, and we notice that they've developed some air holes on the back of their necks, like whale air holes. And then their tails, they grow whales' tails with male and female parts. And then the final shot, we see two whales free at last, swimming behind the ship that's going off into Antarctica. Okay, so this is the narrative in my crass understanding of it. And then this is Bjork and Barney at the opening advertising their film. And at the SF MoMA, they have this thing where they let at the opening, the members opening, they let the super fancy members in first, like in the first hour, and then in the second hour, it's kind of like the medium fancy people, and then in the third hour for the rest of the time, it's the general public, the general members public, right? So Bjork and Barney were there for the first 2 hours, and then at that point, Jennifer Parker and I showed up. Uninvited, shall we say, and we presented a number of unsolicited performances, including fan dancing, lip syncing, samurai wailing, chopstick harikiri, in the lobby and in the women's restroom, and in front of Matthew Barney's installations. Our guerrilla intervention would not have been possible without the spectacular setting of the SF MoMA opening itself. Amidst the live experimental music, elaborate props, other people were dressed up, fried edamame, .com cocktails. It was difficult for the party-going viewers and overwhelmed gallery guards to determine whether we were part of the hired entertainment or not. And so before I show you the brief documentary, I want to just raise a few questions that maybe we can engage later. This performance has left me with these questions. If a guerrilla performance happens during a spectacular opening and no one really sees it or understands it until it appears on YouTube months later, does it still function as a guerrilla performance? Was it more disappointing and painful to make my first drag debut dressed as a geisha, or to be told that I look very pretty while doing so? Was the subversive force of sneaking into SF MoMA, performing and documenting our performance diminished by the press photographers who published our image in the membership catalog with the caption, "A world of art awaits"? How are we to understand the rapid reappropriation and rescripting of this unsanctioned performance within the institutional narrative of the museum? Okay, now I'll show the piece.